Yeah, you might say, I'm getting older. Sometimes I pee when I cough. Oops. But if you don't know that there are people out there who can help you rectify that situation, you will just deal with it. If you know there's someone out there, you might make time for it.
I always like to ask my guests, how are they doing in this moment? PMS. So P is physically, M is mentally, S is spiritually. You can go as deep or as not as you want to.
Physically, mentally, and spiritually. Physically, I'm doing pretty well. I find that as school gets a little bit crazy and I'm sleeping less, that sometimes tanks a little bit. But right now, I feel on top of everything, so I'm doing
Good,
pretty well.
good.
Mentally, I'm also pretty laid back. We just finished most of our midterms for the semester, so I'm excited. Although we start our clinical rotations in January, so I'm kind of nervous about.
You got
I
some
mean, I'm
time and you'll be
excited, but I'm
fine.
very nervous because I want to be a good healthcare provider. And spiritually, I think I'm doing really great. I think I've been doing a pretty good job lately of just staying in touch with who I am and who I want to be for myself and the people around me, and it's kept me very grounded. So I think I'm doing
Good.
actually pretty well at this moment.
Good. I appreciate you sharing. And you are going to be great. The fact that you really care about being a good healthcare provider means that you will be one. Like,
I really hope so. My
you
mom
will.
is she's a physician,
Hmm.
and I don't think I've ever met a physician that is as good as my mom and as attentive and thorough. And it's not just because she's my mother, it's she actually cares about her patients, and that's just been the blueprint since I was a kid. So,
And it makes a difference, and your
there's no
patients will see it.
half-assing it.
Yeah,
I hope so.
they will. They will. I feel like the US does not do a good job about promoting public floor health, educating us, especially postpartum. But I think there is room for knowledge like throughout life, even before, way before postpartum time, and after like the immediate postpartum period. So let's go ahead and hop into it. So, for those who may not know, what exactly is the pelvic floor?
Okay. So there's a really easy conceptual way to think about it, and then there's the actual technical ways to think about it. The conceptual way to think about it is when we think about the core and we talk about core strength, everyone just thinks of your abs. But really, you get structure from, like, if you think about the most structurally sound things, you think of a box. So the front of the box might be your abdominals. The back of the box will be, your lumbar spine, your thoracic spine. The top of the box will be your diaphragm, which has your lungs sitting right on top of it. And the bottom of the box is your pelvic floor. And if any one of those things is weak, you're going to find that you're having structural instability, pain, discomfort, things of that sort. So you can't neglect the pelvic floor. Like if you have really strong abs and your low back is in great condition and your diaphragm is functioning as it should, but you have really weak pelvic floor muscles, you're going to find that things are dropping out of the bottom of the box. You're going to have the typical signs and symptoms of pelvic floor dysfunction, whether it's pain, discomfort, urinary incontinence, bowel incontinence, really painful urination, and even things that people don't think about. For example, with men, they may find that it's really painful to have erections. With women, they may find that it's really painful to have sex. And there could be a number of reasons for that, but pelvic floor health is one of the biggest things that we look at when those symptoms come up.
Oh, I'm so happy that you mentioned men too, because I wanted to talk about men, like touch on it. But
Yeah.
before we do, typically, like even when I'm scrolling on social media, I will see like a coach, a health coach, somebody, or a fitness person will say, "Okay, since you see me, like stop and give me 5 Kegels if you're a woman, right?" So outside of the Kegel exercises, what are some other ways that we can strengthen and improve our pelvic floor?
Yeah. So the funny thing about Kegels is that I think we all think of it as sort of just like a one simple thing where it's like, you squeeze, you release, whatever. But there are a lot of different ways to focus on it. So one of the ways that I like to think about it is an elevator exercise. So when you first think about it, you're squeezing your pelvic floor muscles and you're trying to bring the elevator to the first floor. And then you bring it back down to the ground floor. And then the next time you squeeze, you're trying to bring it up to the second floor. and slowly bring it down to the ground floor. Then the third floor and back down to the ground floor. And you do that over and over again up to the 10th floor. And then you work your way back down. Now you're up to the ninth, up to the eighth, up to the seventh. That's a really good way to go about it. The other thing is, in addition to that, providing different amounts of tension that you're generating in there, you also want to work on holding for time, because just like any other muscles, it's not just about how much power you can generate quickly one time. It's about how long you can sustain that tension, how long you can maintain control. So you might say, all right, I'm going to do my Kegels and I'm going to hold for 5 seconds each time. And then the next time you might bump it up. You might say, okay, I'm going to hold for 7 seconds each time. And then you might go up to 10 seconds each time. So of course, there are a lot of complicated ways to go through it. I mean, there's also stuff that we do with pelvic floor physical therapists where they do internal work and external work. But for me, I think the easiest ways that I've talked to my training clients about it, and even my friends and relatives, is just different ways of varying the Kegel, which we're all pretty familiar with.
So is this something that men can also do?
It is
Um,
something that men should
so
also
do.
do.
Okay, so the same exact exercises. Okay.
The exact same exercises. So it's funny, when I first started implementing Kegels into my regular training routines for my training clients, it was after I'd taken a pre and postnatal course, which basically allows personal trainers to work with uh, pregnant, soon to be pregnant, or recently pregnant clients safely. Doesn't tell you really anything about how to strengthen their pelvic floors, but it tells you how to work with them safely and how to make sure that you're not putting them in harm's way. And the woman who taught this course was incredible. Her name is Annette Lang, and she's pretty much like the person that you want to go to if you want to talk about working with women who are in that
Space.
pregnancy range of life.
Hmm.
And one of the things that she said that stuck with me was, men can and should do these exercises too. And the
Hmm.
reason men can and should do these exercises too is, first of all, because everyone has a pelvic floor,
Hmm.
but also because, especially when you're dealing with young men who really want to exercise and lift heavy, and they get it in their minds that they want this beach body, it's like, well, if you're going to lift heavy, just like you would strengthen your low back to make sure your squat goes okay, and you would strengthen your abs to make sure that everything else you're doing goes okay, you need to strengthen your pelvic floor, because that's also where you will maintain pressure for these heavy lifts that you want to do. So yeah, it's not just that men can, it's that they absolutely should, because we all should.
Typically, whenever I think about like the pelvic floor, I think about specifically that pregnancy period, because just the hormones of pregnancy kind of makes things a little bit looser. And then, of course, like just the gestation itself, right? So, duh, it makes sense, especially when we're thinking about men who are lifting and things. Of course, they also have that like pressure on the pelvic floor. Huh, really good food for thought.
Yeah.
Really, really good
I
food for
will
thought.
actually add this, though.
Hmm.
I think often when we're talking about people who have children, we do think about how after you give birth, you might have some pelvic floor laxity, or you
Hmm.
might lose strength in the pelvic floor muscles. But it's important to note that C-sections are no different. If I'm
Hmm.
cutting into your abdominals, you're losing some strength there. You're losing some stability there. And it takes time to get that back. One of the best things you can do is make sure that the other muscles that take care of your stability are in good condition.
Yep.
And as you are strengthening your abs and getting back to being able to have stability after you've been cut through, you also need to strengthen your pelvic floor. So it's not just women who've had vaginal births, it's C-sections, it's any kind of birthing complication. If you've had long labor and you've had
Hmm.
contractions, anything can cause your pelvic floor to be under uncommon amounts of stress. So
Yeah.
I do want to put that out there and remind women who've had C-sections that they also need to focus on
Very,
this.
very, very true. I wish that there was more, that we had more conversations about this. Even just with like the gynecologist, OB/GYN. And I learned after I had my first child that in Europe, it's very common to go see a physical therapist just routinely to
Yep.
for pelvic floor like retraining and things of that nature. And I'm just like, wow.
So one of the things that we find with regard to pelvic floor health, in the United States, and especially among Black women and Black communities, is that because the quality of our hospitals sometimes aren't as good, and because we often aren't given the time of day when we do see our healthcare providers, frequently we're less educated about pelvic floor health, and pelvic floor physical therapy is presented to us as an option less often.
Hmm.
And what that means is that obviously we know that women in general, especially in America, we don't really talk about women's health enough.
Right.
But then when you have Black women who are dying in childbirth, having really adverse outcomes after childbirth because of the trauma they went through to have the baby,
Yep.
to then not offer these women the care that you know is out there is a real problem. And there was a study actually that came out earlier this year. It came out in, I believe, July of this year, and they were looking at the patient perspective among Black women of pelvic floor physical therapy. And one of the things that these women said was that they felt like they weren't being heard,
Hmm.
and they also felt like they would be heard better if they were seeing someone who understood their own history, their own background, their own
Right.
experiences. I
Hmm.
mean, for me, that was one of the big reasons I wanted to go into pelvic floor health. It
Hmm.
was one of the reasons that was why I went into PT school, so that I
Hmm.
could provide pelvic floor physical therapy, because I think there really is something to be said for representation and
Yeah.
seeing someone who not just looks like you, but isn't going to question your expression of pain, understands your
Right.
expression of pain, and doesn't think, oh, these people complain too much.
Right.
She can get through it. Like,
Right.
if she's telling you she can't get through it, she can't get through
Right.
it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So true. I think about my own experience with my second child. It was a traumatic labor and delivery, and thank goodness we both made it through. It was complicated, but even like the first month or so, I felt like I was just off like kilter. Like my pelvis did not feel right. I felt like I was walking with a wobble still. Um, and it just did not feel right. So went to the OB-GYN. She, thank goodness, a Black woman, said, okay, let's go to send you to physical therapy. So I went to a physical therapist who I'm not sure if his specialty was the pelvic floor, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um,
Most people's aren't.
I mean, he did his best and it did help me. We barely talked about like Kegels per se. He really was mainly concerned about the anterior, like the abdominal wall. So he wanted to get my transverse abdominis back together and all of those things, which, okay, it did help. But yeah, even just talking to him, I felt like I really have to explain 1,000 times what's going on here. And it would make such of a difference if I saw somebody who I feel like, okay, you get me. If I say it one time, like, you know what I'm coming from and you know what I mean. And that just goes for just across all healthcare fields, unfortunately. Like, we just aren't heard, we aren't seen.
I will say this. The things that he wanted you to do are important. They're
Mhm.
very important. And
He
I'm really
helped. He
happy that he
helped.
touched on those things.
Yeah.
I will also say, however, that I just got a referral for pelvic floor physical therapy. And I was speaking to one of my professors who's been practicing for a really long time about, what I should do, because I was having some lumbar spasms. The muscles in my low back were just like seizing up. And I'd also been having some pelvic floor instability. And the big piece of advice she gave me was, someone who does pelvic floor physical therapy has gone through the exact same schooling as the person who doesn't do pelvic floor physical therapy. So they will be able to address the lumbar problems you're having, maybe the abdominal wall issues that you're having, anything that's in that region, they will have experience, but they will also have experience working with the pelvic floor. So if you think there's a pelvic floor problem, don't
Mhm.
see two PTs. Go see a pelvic floor PT, because they'll
Yeah.
take care of everything. And it was great advice, because I was like, oh, do I need to go see someone for my back
Yeah.
and for this? And she was like, you can
Yeah.
just go see one person. The schooling that you're doing now is the schooling that absolutely every physical therapist goes through. But she said, you know as well as I do, you have to do additional schooling to practice pelvic floor PT. And I was like, I absolutely do. And she's like, go to someone who's done that and this.
Yeah.
So that would be, I guess, a little tiny piece of advice to anybody who is listening to this. If you think there's some pelvic floor stuff going on, a
Go
regular
directly.
physical therapist, yeah, like they'll know the basics. But if you want to go to someone who's had the additional education,
Mhm.
see a
Yeah.
pelvic floor PT. Go to a pelvic
Yeah.
floor health center. Almost every major hospital has them. Like the big
Yeah.
hospital systems, they all have them.
You mentioned before maybe like some incontinence and things, might be some signs, painful sex. What are some other signs that like something needs to be addressed with the pelvic floor?
I'll break it down into like tiny little bite-sized pieces. One of the things that happens, especially with urinary incontinence, is that it's not just, I pee sometimes. There are different kinds of urinary incontinence. So you may find that when you cough or laugh or sneeze or exercise, you get a little bit of leakage. That is different than if you suddenly feel urgency
Mm-hmm.
and need to go. And those two things aren't caused by the same things. If you feel it when you're sneezing, laughing, coughing, that is being caused by pressure.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel sudden urgency, it may mean that the muscles that keep urine in aren't functioning properly. It may mean that your bladder is not responding to filling as well as it could. So, it's important to note both of those things when we talk about urinary incontinence. We should also think about whether it feels like you can't fully empty your bladder, because if you can't fully empty your bladder, it also means that there's some dysfunction happening, because there are muscles that allow it to become smaller and push urine out. One of the big issues with um, not being able to fully empty your bladder is that if your bladder gets really full and urine isn't coming out in the direction it's supposed to come out, it goes back up into your
Oh
kidneys and
yeah.
you run the risk of having kidney problems. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as soon as these symptoms appear, have
Yeah.
it checked out. Go see your PC or a gynecologist. But you may also have a lot of lower back pain. You may have some pelvic or groin pain. You may have pain during intercourse. That's always like one of the really hard things to get people to talk about. I've had a number of friends who've experienced just extreme pain during intercourse. Like sometimes it feels like stiffness, sometimes it feels like sharp pain, but that is an important thing. Urinary incontinence isn't the only kind of incontinence. You may find that you have uncontrollable gas. You may find that you struggle to keep your bowels in. You may find that you have a lot of pain after bowel movements. So it's important to think about that. And I will say that those also become things to think about when we talk about men. So specifically with black men are dying of prostate cancer at a significantly higher rate than
Yep.
any other race in the United States.
Yep.
And it's not because we're more likely to have prostate cancer.
Right.
It's because we're less likely to talk about it. We're
Yep.
less likely to go see someone about it until it's sometimes too late. And we don't always get the care that we need. So just like when we talk about Black maternal health and
Mm-hmm.
how the trauma of childbirth for Black women causes these negative health outcomes, dealing with prostate cancer causes negative health outcomes for Black men who survive that.
Yeah.
And if you're not thinking about leaking stool
Mm.
and pain after you go as a symptom of pelvic floor dysfunction, you're not going to go have it treated. You're not going to go see a physical therapist who can help you get back to normal. You're not
Mm-hmm.
going to think about how the prostate is extremely important in men's sex lives.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are having pain with erections after you have a prostate issue, if you're
Right.
having pain with intercourse when you have a prostate issue, like go get it checked out.
Yeah.
It's I wish I could
Yeah.
not giggle about that, but it's so unfortunate. I was talking to someone recently and I was talking about how, I was also looking forward to working with men, and they were like, that's pretty rare. Why would you want to work with men for pelvic floor when so many women need this? And I was like, well, when I think of my own father, the likelihood that my father is going to go to the doctor and tell some 26-year-old white guy in a lab coat, oh, I think I'm having problems with my butthole. Like, he's just not going to do it. It's not going to happen. But if someone like me is there and is able to say, we can help with this, we can do
Mhm.
an examination, we can see what's going on, we can refer you out, I think that he would be more likely to talk about it. But if he doesn't know it's an issue in the first place,
Yeah.
what's he going to say?
I think a lot of the times, though, I hear people say, like, for example, like a little bit of urinary incontinence and things like that are like, oh, I'm getting old. I feel like we dismiss things as just a normal quote part of aging, where these things aren't necessarily normal. Like they may happen frequently or commonly, but it doesn't mean that it has to be a part of aging too. So I think that's
I
part of
agree.
like why people don't go seek anything. They're like, oh, If it hurts during, if I have an erection that's painful, well, maybe, I'll just slow down with sex. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
so,
these things are normal to experience, but, you know, just like with any other health, knowing that there is possible treatment is
mhm,
half the battle.
for sure.
And I think that that's very common. I think it's very common for people in general, especially in a country where we don't have really easy access to healthcare and it's not that affordable. You know, people don't
Right.
want to go to the doctor.
Right.
But I think about Black health outcomes a lot, like a
Hmm.
lot, probably more than is healthy. And I always think back to my own experiences and how I've been very lucky. You know, my
Hmm.
mom's a physician, so if I tell her something's up, she'll say, "Hey, I think it's this. Go see your
Hmm.
doctor."
Hmm.
My grandmother was an NP, so when I've had other issues, my grandmother will say, "Yeah, go get it checked out." And I remember when I first started going to therapy,
Hmm.
my grandmother was like, "I think something's up. You seem depressed. I don't know what's going on, but if I find you a therapist, will you go?" And I was like, "If you
Nice.
think I should go see a therapist, I will absolutely go see a therapist."
Hmm.
Sometimes it's just opening the door to talk about the possibilities of treatment. I was perfectly happy to sit with my depression and to not really function on a day to day basis, to struggle to leave the house, to struggle to go to work, to struggle to get
Yeah.
through meals. I was totally okay to deal with that because it hadn't even crossed my mind that I could go talk to someone and maybe work through a bit of that.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that I had her to kind of call me out and say, "I love you. I care about you. Here are your options."
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with, pelvic floor health or any kind of health. Yeah, you might say, "I'm getting older. Sometimes I pee when I cough. Oops." But if you don't know that there are people out there who can help you rectify that situation,
Right.
you
Right.
will just deal with it. If you
Right.
know there's someone out there, you might make time for it. You might see, is this affordable? Does my insurance cover it? Do I have insurance? Does Medicaid
Hmm.
cover it? You might actually look for someone. So,
Yeah. As you were talking about, your grandmother calling you out for like signs and symptoms of depression makes you think about how a lot of times we think, oh, it's just adulting. Adulting sucks. So a lot of us are walking around just functionally like depressed and or anxious. Just think, well, this is part of being an adult, part of being a big girl and a big boy. Like, just this is it. So yeah. So your point about knowing what exists out there for us is so important. Like you said, it is half the battle. Just being to be able to relate what's going on there. You know what? I have a question about going back to Kegels a bit. I saw somebody who was saying that we can be overdoing it with Kegels. Is that true from your perspective? Can
that's a
we
hard
do too
question for me to
much?
answer.
Okay.
It is a hard question for me to answer because the reality is you can overdo any exercise. I think part of exercise in general is making sure that you are doing it correctly,
Mm,
and making sure that you do have a game plan in place. And if you do those things first before you just start doing Kegels, I think you'll be less likely to overdo that or anything else. For example, a lot of people think they're doing Kegels and they're just not. They're
yeah.
sucking in their belly button, they're clenching their abs, but they're not
Mhm.
actually using their pelvic floor muscles.
Yeah.
A lot of times we don't, just like I was saying, we think about, urinary incontinence and the birth canal, but we don't often talk about the things going around your butt.
Right.
Those are things you can also
Yeah.
voluntarily clench and release. And so I can't
Sure.
really answer the question about whether you can do Kegels too much because, to be honest, I haven't heard that, but I
Hmm.
do know that you can overdo anything. I would say that the first step, however, is to make sure that you're doing it correctly and you
Yeah.
have a plan or a routine or a goal so that it's not just happening willy nilly.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. And I kind of want to touch on your journey. So, are you a physical trainer,
I'm a
personal
personal
trainer?
trainer currently, and I am about halfway through the physical therapy doctorate.
Hmm.
Um, I've been a personal trainer. Oh, I'm so old. I've been a personal trainer
Stop.
since 2006.
You're not so old.
Prior to that, I really wasn't interested in exercise at all.
Hmm.
I went to school, I studied art, I got out, and the only reason I was even working at a gym was because I had to pay back my student loans.
I hear you. I hear you. Listen.
Yeah, I was
So,
working
do
in the corporate office at a gym, and the owner, who I will say, looking back, I wouldn't change anything. I'm so happy my life took the trajectory that it took. But, he was kind of a jerk. And he
Mhm.
basically called me fat and bullied me into going to the gym.
Oh
And I
my
was like,
gosh.
yeah, it was trash. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And he was like, well, I scheduled an hour for you with my trainer during your workday. So if you don't go, I'm not paying you for the hour. And I was like, well, I have student loans to pay back and I'm getting paid good money. So I guess I better go to this freaking session. And I went, and I'm so lucky that he paired me with the trainer that he did, because the trainer didn't care at all. The trainer was like, this isn't about why he wanted you to come here. This isn't about why all these other people are here. How are you feeling right now? And what do you want to get out of this hour? And I was like,
Mhm.
honestly, I'm angry that I'm even here. I'm
Mhm.
frustrated and I'm feeling really anxious because I don't think I belong in this building.
Mhm.
And he was like, cool, we're going to spend the hour letting you get rid of some of your anger, letting you get rid of some of your anxiety, and finding ways for exercise to do the things you want it to do. And that singular hour changed how I felt, not just about exercise, but about finding a place where we belong. And I
Mm.
remember thinking after that, like, I'm never going to look like this trainer. I mean, because he was beautiful. He was like tall, and he had like flawless, smooth, super dark skin, and he was like muscular. I mean, he was just, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he was so handsome and so athletic looking and so kind. I was like, I'm never gonna have that. But I did know that there were other people in the world who felt about exercise the way I felt, and especially felt about gyms the way I felt,
Mhm.
and maybe hadn't thought about the fact that exercise doesn't have to be this aesthetic thing where you spend your entire life trying to lose weight and get jacked and have abs and like whatever. It's
Right.
not always about
Right.
that.
Right.
Sometimes it's, I had a really tough day. Is there a way I can go sweat and feel better? Is
Yeah.
there something I can do at the gym or outside of the gym that will let me sleep tonight?
Yeah.
Is there some way I can get in touch with my body so when I do have back pain or urinary incontinence or pain during intercourse, I'm aware of it?
Mhm.
Because I've spent so many years disconnecting from my body that now I don't even know when anything's going on. I really wanted to be able to provide that for other people like me, just kind of
Mhm.
like the exercise outcasts.
Yeah.
And I decided I wanted to be a trainer. That was 2005, got certified in 2006. I haven't really looked back. Um,
That's really
it's
dope.
been a fun journey, but it's honestly always been about the people who aren't really your
Yeah.
typical gym goers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. I
Yeah.
feel like I had a period in my life, like my 20s, I was like a gym rat. Like I love the gym just because the aesthetic. I loved how my body looked because I could see
Yeah.
the changes happening. That's no longer the situation now. And now I'm to the point where I'm trying to get back into a gym routine, specifically because I'm like, I want to age gracefully, meaning I want to keep my mobility and things like that. I still want to stay strong. My balance, all of those things are what's really important to me now. And also, I spent so much time, like you said, disconnected from my body that I just want to come to a space where I know myself really, really well again. And
Yeah.
part of that is reconnecting physically with myself. So, do you plan to bridge your personal training with the physical therapy?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, so the reason that I actually decided to go back to school was
Mhm.
over the course of my 19 years working in personal training and fitness in general, I kind of ended up with a niche clientele that I was really excited to work with.
Mhm.
I had women of all ages, and a lot of them were either moms or pregnant,
Mhm.
and also people over 65. And I felt really passionate about both of those groups. I love working with both of those groups. And over time, they all ended up having a singular thing in common. They all kept saying, "Oh, I have to go to pelvic floor physical therapy."
Mm.
My older clients, "Oh, I have to go to pelvic floor physical therapy."
Mm.
Um, all of them. And so there came a point when I realized that of course I'm always open to learning. I wouldn't be in this career for 19 years if I wasn't open to learning, if I didn't always want to do the best for my clients.
Mhm.
But there came a point where I realized that if I really wanted to serve those communities, I needed more education. I needed to go back to school.
Yeah.
And I needed to go back to school for the things that they actually need.
Mhm.
The thing they actually all needed was pelvic floor physical therapy. Like, could
Wow.
I have gone back to school and done med school and been a physician? Maybe. I mean, that wasn't my passion. I watched my mom do it. I didn't necessarily want to do that.
Hmm.
Could I have gone back and just decided to do orthopedic physical therapy? Sure. Almost everybody needs orthopedic physical
Hmm.
therapy at some point.
Hmm.
But to specifically take care of the groups that I have been working with for nearly 2 decades now, I knew that it needed to be pelvic floor. So
Yeah.
would I combine the two? I mean, maybe, but I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, I want to run with the thing that I feel passionately about,
Yeah.
and that I want to focus. I want to focus my
Yeah.
energy and give people the best of a thing,
Yeah.
not a little bit of everything. So I think I'm more likely to just do PT.
Yeah, I hear you. So as we wrap up, what is one takeaway that you would like to leave the listeners with as it relates to pelvic health, pelvic floor health, all the things, if there's one thing?
I will say that it is so infrequent for people to think about pelvic floor health and how their pelvic floor is functioning in general, that the public as a whole, at least in America, is less likely to talk to their doctors about this sort of thing. If they have a cold, they might not go see the doctor, or they might. If
Yep.
they have a stomach ache, they might not go see the doctor, or they might. If there's incontinence, you're a little bit embarrassed about it. If
Yep.
there's pain having sex, you're a little bit embarrassed about it. If you can't keep your bowels in, you're a little bit embarrassed about it. Just me knowing that there is treatment available for all of those things, put away the shame, just talk to your
Yep.
physician about it. They'll refer you to the people that you need to be referred to. So that's really the one takeaway that I would like listeners to walk out with. Like,
Yeah.
don't push that stuff aside. Don't feel like it's embarrassing. If nothing else, go talk to your doctor about the thing almost no one ever talks to their doctor about.
Excellent advice. And where can the people find you online, your website or socials? Yeah.
I have a blog that is mostly about physical therapy, but sometimes I rant about other things. And it's Röbynn Europe PT.info, ROBYNN Europe PT.info.
Okay. And I will drop that down below in the show notes. That way it's an easy click for you to
Yeah.
go ahead and to connect with Röbynn over there. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your
Thank you for having
time.
me. So
This was a great
exciting.
conversation. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Be Well Sis. If you'd like to get in touch with us, there's a link in the show notes. Be Well Sis is hosted by me, Dr. Cassandra Dunbar, and produced by Edit Audio. Don't forget to hit follow so you never miss an episode. Until next time, be well, sis.